Crypto is on the rise, making that dough in the crypto paradise. Watching it go, buying low, selling high. Riding the wave, I'm here to stay, living in the digital age. No banks, no fees, just decentralized. It's crypto paradise. Ooh. No banks, no fees.
Alrighty, let's kick this thing off. Good morning from Paradise Surfers. My name is Crypto Amaru, joined as always by Nick the Crypto Hitman, and it is Friday, March 6th. Happy Friday, everybody. What an eventful week we've had. Oil is pumping, ladies and gentlemen. Risk assets selling off. Bitcoin sub $70,000, and we see a lot of red over on the S&P 500. Is this a cause for concern if you're a long-term investor? Should we be panicking right now? Should we be selling everything? Or will this pass just like everything else? I think you know the answer to that, folks. But we'll dig into the oil story here on today's show. But we got a lot of other great things to cover for you. The labor market's looking like shit. Job numbers out. Major downward revisions for February. Below expectations for the rest of the job numbers. Man, the Fed is in a tough place right now, aren't they? So what will the Fed do? I believe there's an emergency meeting they called later today, so we'll see what Powell has to say for himself. Clarity Act news. Man, we got a lot of good stuff to cover today, so maybe we can start with some unemployment figures if we want to get into the macros. Up to you. Oh, you're muted, by the way.
I said, yeah, we can just kind of start with the Fed because you talked about it. We can kind of run through a couple things here and then look at Polymarket to see if that switch. Remember, there was less than a 1% chance of a cut yesterday. I'm eager to see what it is now after these U.S. unemployment numbers came out, see if it changed at all. Remember, yesterday you could bet $100 to win $14,000 if they do, in fact, do a 0.25 basis point cut here in about 11 or 12 days from now. What do you think the Polymarket numbers are going to be? I haven't looked at them yet. Let's go through these two news pieces. Do you think they changed overnight or not yet?
No, the Fed's too stubborn. The Fed does not seemingly want to change its mind based on new data and new information. They're convinced inflation is still more of a concern than a deteriorating labor market and an absolutely frozen housing market. They still think that inflation is more of a problem, despite it being well below 3% and probably below 2% if you look at the real-time trueflation numbers. So the Fed has its head up its ass and probably will not do the right thing. There is a chance, though, that they start some sort of QE light. I know they've been kind of doing that already for the past week. Do they engage with that further? I'm not believing they'll change their mind on the rate cut because a bunch of them already come out and said, we're at neutral, close to neutral. We're more worried about inflation. We're not cutting the rates.
I think it's pretty silly. Here you go. Below expectations on the unemployment just came out. Breaking, the U.S. economy unexpectedly loses 92,000 jobs in February, below the expectations of a 58,000 gain. The unemployment rate was 4.4%, above expectations of 4.3%. This marks the second monthly job loss since the 2020 pandemic. The U.S. labor market is clearly weakening. Now, what is causing the weakening in the labor market? I don't really know. Is it AI? Is it technology? I mean, seemingly we have all these car manufacturers, technology companies that are building and investing here in America, and they're hiring Americans to do those jobs, yet the job numbers are decreasing according to this data.
It's probably partially an AI story. I mean, you're hearing it week in, week out. Big tech companies laying off significant portions of their workforce. Block just did it this week. That was huge news. And, other big tech companies continue to do the same. But I think it's wider than that. I think it's more broad-based. The weakness is broader than just the tech companies. I look at housing, man. Housing is such a driver of the economy. The auto industry is a huge driver of the economy. I heard the other day Americans are now facing $800 car payments if you go and you finance a car, that maybe 5 years ago would have cost $30,000. Now the car's $50,000. $1,000. You
Interest
have
rates are
interest
higher.
rates double or triple what they were, back during 2019, 2020 time. So how, auto industry is basically suffering under these high rates. The housing market is absolutely frozen. Lowest level ever recorded. Wow. And the Fed somehow thinks the rates are at a good spot. Make it make sense.
Well, and it's, even people who are doing okay. Like, I take myself, for example. I bought this house right before COVID and then refinanced it during COVID. I have like a 2.85% rate on a house that I bought for 450 that's now appraised at over 700,000. Like, where would I go move, or why would I move? Like, do I want a little bit more space, a little more land? Sure. But you have even homeowners who are doing okay that's like, why would I sell this? Because what am I going to get into? The prices are high out there. I'm going to go from a 2.85 mortgage up to a 6 or 7% mortgage. Like, that doesn't make any financial sense. So it's not just people trying to get in their first homes. They always talk about the youth not being able to afford it, whatever it is. It's also the people who own the current homes and refinanced or bought during COVID low interest rates that have no incentive to move. It would be financially irresponsible to sell this house even though I'm up $300,000 on it because I have to go buy another overpriced property at a double or triple the interest rate.
The only place I'm going to move is Mexico because America's a goddamn ripoff. But in all seriousness, you have to understand the downstream effects of the frozen housing market. It's affecting the entire economy. Just do a thought experiment for a second. When the housing market's frozen, realtors aren't making any money. That's obvious. How about new home builders? How about home builders or home remodelers? How about home flippers? Right? So, and then how about all the downstream effects of that? So that's materials not being purchased. That is craftsmen and contractors not being hired. Then that craftsman and contractor, he not making any money. The realtor is not making any money. So they're not going out and buying wifey a nice new diamond necklace for Valentine's Day or whatever the hell. There are tremendous downstream effects of this much of the economy. The housing market affects so much, essentially having been frozen now for years for the reason Nick stated, because the Fed has decided to keep interest rates too high. It's really a shame. People are hurting out there. You're worried about phantom inflation that might come because of a war that could end in a week. And then gas prices are going to fall right back down. The inflation's going to go away. Or how about the phantom inflation? You're worried about tariffs that never materialize. But meanwhile, you are staring at the face of a destroyed housing market, Americans who can't find jobs, the worst housing market in the past 5 years. That's the real problem they need to be focusing on. So, man, I'm pissed at the Fed, man. They're effing up left and right.
Let's see how it's affecting the charts today. Let's go over here. Here is Coinbase. Coinbase got as high as 215 yesterday. We saw a sell-off overnight, and the market opened for stocks. So Coinbase fell down to 195, but is back rebounding to 199. Looking at Bitcoin, remember we were in between the moving averages. This was a great feat. Up as high as 75,000. Did we run too high too fast as we have sold off this morning with the stock sell-off? You want to see this 4-hour candle rebound and catch itself at least back to around $69,000, put you back in the moving averages. Right now, this hasn't bounced yet. Coinbase bounced, stock market bounced a little. Bitcoin has not bounced back up. Again, you're still well above the previous lows, but I would love for this 4-hour candle to close back in between these moving averages and keep that consolidation and that pressure cooker going between the moving averages that we just broke out of. What is Ethereum doing? Still floating right around that white line. Right before the show, we were sitting on the moving average and the white line where they were crossing right around 2,000. As we were getting ready for the live show, it looks like this 4-hour candle just started, and it is red, $1,980. Not the end of the world. Again, this one is harder because this red candle almost needs to flip green on this 4-hour close to get back above the moving average and the white line. We'll see how that progresses. It is nice that the RSI has reset to neutral. Technometer reset to neutral. So now it's a wait and see moment here for Ethereum. So what is NASDAQ doing? NASDAQ down 1.5%. As you can see, we're bouncing off and regaining the moving average. Yesterday we did it. We opened red today, gapping lower. Will stocks close red today, or will there be a light at the end of the tunnel and we see another one of these resurgences before the close? What do you think is going to happen today with stock market, with oil prices, as it does seem that these red candles on the 4-hour are directly impacting Bitcoin and Ethereum as of this morning?
Yeah, I mean the market's clearly jumpy right now, clearly sensitive to the statements and the moment to moment happenings around the war in Iran. So I'm not surprised the market is kind of reacting the way it has been over the past few days. But this all comes back to oil going on a run over the past few days, which is frankly to be expected. Strait of Hormuz is closed. There are concerns as to whether this war stretches on much longer than probably anybody wants it to. And so we're looking at $90 a barrel, and we're up not 10% in a day on oil. So when that happens, the rest of the markets sell off. This is a well-documented correlation, right? So I'm, zooming out, I'm not worried, and maybe I'll get to my thesis as to why in a minute. But what's your take on the oil here running? Is this the reason for the market sell-off, or is it something else?
I mean, we saw oil run immediately after the first bombings in Iran, and then we subsequently followed that with a steep sell-off back into the 70s, or like 69 a barrel. We saw it starting to tick up yesterday. We were up about 16 to 18% on the 5-year, and now we're up another 10% here to 88.99 a barrel. It is down. Let's see what this does. Down $1 for the day so far. It was as high as $90, so it is off the high a little bit. But I mean, it's interesting to see this happening. We did see the sell-off. We see the rally. This is going to continue to happen. I said yesterday I don't see us going above $100 a barrel again, which is still, a good 12% away or something like that. But the reason it's surprising is all the numbers that came out with how much we are currently getting as far as oil here in the United States, natural gas here in the United States, the number of barrels we're getting out of Venezuela, the kind of handshake agreements we have with El Salvador and Argentina, who produce a little bit of oil, and the fact of the matter that we have solved most of the problems of the Strait of Hormuz, but more stuff did pop up today, and I guess that's why oil wants to jump. Again, the Strait of Hormuz, the past 5 years, has been about 20% of the global oil. The United States has upticked, so I bet you that number's down closer to 15%. So I think this is really just markets doing market things, people and traders impacting price. And I don't think this resolves to the upside above $100 a barrel. I think we head down lower once again.
Well, it's all in the control of President Donald J. Trump, isn't it? The reason why we saw the spike this morning is he, I think, put out a tweet or a statement or Truth Social thing, who knows, basically saying that we're not looking to negotiate total victory, F the regime.
And that's not what the markets want to see. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in it for as long as is needed. But here's the reality of the situation. First of all, if you guys in the market are taking every single thing Trump says at face value, and by the way, he has followed through on a lot of his promises, so maybe that makes sense. But for the most part, look, he's going to say what he needs to say, and then he can turn around and do something completely different. So, this could resolve itself tomorrow with the Trump statement of, okay, we've won the war. And by the way, I don't think he's going to say tomorrow we'll have won the war, but maybe in 1 to 2 more weeks of just completely obliterating all their offensive and defensive capabilities. And then we'll let the Kurds come in and, defend the people and maybe take care of the regime on the ground. We'll have to see how that plays out. But the bottom line is, it is fully within Trump's control to end this war at any moment in time. So I don't think he'll let things get completely out of control with the, let's say, the global oil markets. But remember, too, interesting point to make. The rise in the price of oil and the closing of the Strait of Hormuz hurts China way more than it hurts the U.S. because we produce so much oil. We produce more oil than any country now. Drill, baby, drill. That worked out. So we're in a pretty good spot. I know people are going to be complaining about they're going to see higher gas at the pump here pretty soon, if not already, and they're going to start complaining. Even though it's only going to be about $5 extra every time you fill up your tank, people will still complain nonetheless. So there will be some political pressure there. But long story short, U.S. is going to be fine. Trump could end this war tomorrow. And the one final point I'll make is, I was watching an analyst yesterday. He was saying that it may not even take Trump ending the war. It could just take a single tanker, oil tanker, I can't hear you, but oil tanker crossing through the Strait of Hormuz to basically signal to the markets that the strait's back open and ships can pass and the U.S. is protecting them and then everything's insured now So a single tanker going through the strait could actually cause oil price to crash back down, let alone Donald Trump ending the war.
Yeah, oil, like many other charts, usually if you gap higher while the market is closed, at some point in its history, that gap gets refilled. The gap is down at $67.50 to $69 for oil. So obviously, we would all be rooting to be back down there because that would get gas prices back in that national average below $3 once again. We'll see what gas prices do here. And here in St. Louis, even though we've trickled up from $55 a gallon to $67 a gallon over the past 10 days with this war, 7 days, prices have not gone up yet. So maybe they were kind of holding up. I'm sure they're going to raise them now that the oil price barrel just shot up today, and they're business owners like anybody else. But we stayed right around the 289 to 299 level this entire rise up the past 10 days. Nobody really moved on prices. So it'll be interesting in the next couple days when I got to fill up the van, fill up the Corvette, fill up everything to see if we're up 10 cents or 20 cents a gallon.
I'm sure price will be up. But like I said yesterday, I mean, I guess it kind of comes back down to where do you stand on this war? Do you think it's a just war? Do you think Iran and the regime, deserved it, or were you? I mean, it just kind of depends on where you fall on that. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're talking about if it normally costs you $50 to fill up your tank, it's going to cost you $55. Are we really up in arms over $5? I mean, maybe if you drive your car every day and you're filling up and you're spending hundreds a month or something on it, but I don't know. I think the average American fills it up couple times a month, maybe once a month. Their car, it's extra $5 each time. I mean, are we really? This is what we're so overly concerned about is $5? A little weird.
Louis Lullaby, what's going on? Miko Chapo, good morning, guys. Martin Max King says hello, and AJ West says good morning as well. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, throw them in the chat. Well, let's talk about gold here, because while stocks are down 1.5%, Bitcoin and Ethereum got big red candles on the 4-hour, really need that to bounce. Well, gold held its moving average once again, and this does not help Bitcoin and Ethereum price. We've talked about this many times. When gold sells off, we saw We saw a surge in gold, in Bitcoin and Ethereum. As gold finds its footing, a little bit of a green candle today amidst stock market red, well, Bitcoin and Ethereum sell off. We want to see this yellow moving average give away. It's now held 1, 2, 3, 4 times in a row. It's time to see yet another drop down to this red moving average, just like we saw back here, and that is when Bitcoin and ETH will continue to outperform. Now, gold price above $5,000 still seems awfully expensive. What's your upside objectives for gold? I mean, you're limited on profits here, in my opinion, and other people agree with me. Kazakhstan here just announced to convert $350 million worth of their gold strategic reserve to buy Bitcoin and crypto. That would be probably a large portion of it. I would assume $250 million into at least Bitcoin, maybe $50 to $100 million into ETH, and then maybe the remaining $0 to $50 million in other crypto assets. Did you see this article? What do you think of the article? Do you think it's a smart move?
I hope they don't buy XRP with any of that money. Just throw that out there to begin with. But yeah, man, I think it's smart to rotate from the most expensive asset in human history, that is having a market cap of $35 trillion, and to rotate into the better version of that asset, Bitcoin, at a sub $2 trillion market cap. Yes, I do think that is wise. I think that makes a lot of sense. And maybe you don't sell off all your gold because, okay, fine, hold some gold. But take a little bit of the gold gains and sell it for the better version of gold at a much lower market cap. Isn't that just like trading 101? Buy low, sell high. This is not that complicated. I don't know why more nations aren't doing this. This is a no-brainer.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think other nations are doing this just not announcing it? Maybe that's why we had the 25% straight down sell-off in gold, although it's bounced back about half of that. Or do you think this will be a domino effect to get other countries to follow suit, other smaller countries, but also perhaps even the United States of America? Remember, President Trump wants the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. Yes, we have the largest one right now, but he is open to buying more Bitcoin as long as it is neutral to the debt and neutral to the cost for the American taxpayer. And gold, well, we got a lot of gold. Is there a chance that some of that gets sold for Bitcoin? I don't know. Do you think this is a domino effect for other smaller countries and potentially even the tier 1 countries of the globe?
I think smaller countries are already getting in on Bitcoin. We've seen that obviously with El Salvador. Now Kazakhstan, Bhutan is big on Bitcoin and crypto. So the smaller countries, I'm sure I'm missing a bunch, are already behind Bitcoin and crypto in a big way, and I think more and more will come online. We need the major powers to step in here, though, to really flip the script. And I've seen some, let's just call it conspiracy theories or theories, posited out there on social media that, I mean, it's all what Trump is doing now with Iran, Venezuela, the Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's all designed to basically neuter and neutralize the China threat. And what he could do is sort of, next steps in this process. He could sort of weaponize Bitcoin by having, create that Bitcoin strategic reserve, onshored pretty much a lot of the mining here in the U.S. And then, man, it wouldn't take too much for us to sell a bunch of our gold on Fort Knox, or wherever we're holding it. I think we still have the biggest supplies of gold, even though China's been buying up so much of it. We then take that gold, sell it, crush the price, hurting China, then taking that money, using it to buy Bitcoin, causing Bitcoin to run. We control basically all of Bitcoin, and then we sort of monetize the Bitcoin network and make all these financial institutions, they're going on chain. We got this genius stablecoin bill. All those stable coins are now buying U.S. treasuries, and we basically just crushed China, who tried to hurt us by buying all that gold. They were the ones that caused that big run for the most part. So this would be sweet, sweet revenge. I don't know how much truth there is to this conspiracy theory, but I really do like it, and I hope it happens.
Update: Clarity Act could still pass without Democrats. Senate expects late March markup. I mean, we've been saying we want it done by Q1 of 2026 to kind of fall in line with all the other macros, from tax rebates to tariff rebates to stimulus checks to interest rate cuts. The list goes on and on. So we were running out of time here. We got 20-something days left. New reports suggest the Clarity Act may move forward in the Senate Banking Committee, even if no Democrats vote yes. We already saw it get through the Agricultural Committee with 12 votes for yes, all Republicans, and 11 votes for no, all Democrats, but it still passed because you just need to have one extra vote in the Agricultural group. Now it's moving to the Senate Banking Committee. Sources say the bill could pass along party lines, but Senator Tillis' vote remains critical if there's no bipartisan support. Negotiations are focused heavily on stablecoin yield and rewards, the main issue that stalled earlier progress. Industry sources describe talk as moving in the right direction. If progress is made over the next 3 weeks, the Senate Banking Committee is expected to schedule a markup in late March. More to come. I'll keep updating. This is from Diana herself. I think I'm still alive. I think we lost Crypto Amaru. There he is. He's back. I think I'm still alive. Well, you dropped off, buddy. So I went ahead and kept reading it. Essentially, we got through this Clarity Act. Nothing surprising. We talk about how we think Clarity Act in crypto and Bitcoin is one of the first things that could be partisan, but yet the votes that keep going through, all the Democrats keep voting no, but luckily there's enough Republicans in power that have got it to this point. Next is the Banking Committee, of which, as long as all the Republicans vote yes, it doesn't matter if all the Democrats vote no. Do you think this gets passed, or do you think some Democrats finally yield and start voting what's best for America and best for the financial markets versus what's just best for their party line?
I think a few Democrats come across the aisle. I don't know within this committee what's going to happen, but eventually once it reaches like the full House, full Senate, you're going to have enough bipartisan support for it to pass. But the crazy thing to think about, the Democrats are siding with the banks. The Democrats,
they don't want
they're coming out on the wrong side of every single issue. They're siding with Ayatollah Supreme Leader Khomeini, who slaughtered 30,000 of his own people for protesting and caused terror around the world for 50 years. They're siding with him over President Trump and Americans. Don't get me started on the transgender stuff. They're siding with everything that's wrong, and they're now siding with the banks, who want to prevent average everyday Americans from earning 5% yield on their money. That is wild to think about. That is absolutely wild. I don't know what to make of it. Is it Trump derangement syndrome? Is it just, who knows? I want to get inside their head, but how is it that you represent the American people and you are essentially preventing them from earning a small percentage, frankly, on their money? What a shame.
Yeah, 3 to 5% on the money, I think, is the stablecoin yield they want. Versus, well, that's because banks, they want your money to fractionalize, reserve it. If you give them 1,000, they can lend out 10,000, and they only got to pay you a measly like 0.25% or something crazy like that.
Do not keep your money in the bank. Don't use the bank if you can help it. I can't wait till we live in a world like I want to be able to pay my credit card directly off with crypto. I want to be able to do everything with crypto. I don't want to have to cash out. I don't want to have to deal with fiat on ramps, and I don't want to have to deal with, I have to send money every month to the condo administration company for the Paradise Pad, right? I want to send that money using stable coins, right to their Web3 wallet instead of to their bank, where I get charged fees and it takes time and there's having all these checks and processes involved. When can we get to that world where we're finally more on chain? We can just break ourselves free from the banks.
Yeah, it's also just crazy. Like one of the first reasons they got in Bitcoin and whatnot, more of an entrepreneur, doing work with Learn Crypto, doing work with you over the years. We got Chow Chow, whatever. So it's like if I just randomly get a payout from one of those, get a check, whatever it may be, or I need to get money from the bank to then do that, it's like, oh, sorry, bank is closed today. Oh, sorry, ATM's down outside and the inside's closed. Oh, you can't deposit this check to Monday. Oh, you did the digital deposit. That's a great new upgrade, right? That's awesome. Oh, you have limits on how much you can deposit. If it's after a certain amount of time, it can't go through. If it's over a certain amount, we're going to release 200 to you now, and we'll give you the other 3,000 on Tuesday of next week. Like, what? That's insane to me. It's wild.
Yeah, and forget about trying to actually take your money out of the bank. If I went to the bank right now and I was like, I had 50,000, give me 50,000 of my own money.
Oh no.
You can't. They barely give it. Like, I mean, they'll make you go through all hoops and shit, and then they may not even give it to you, and then they'll probably report you to the feds. Like, this guy's trying to take out a lot of cash. Look out for this guy. What is this? We are not even in control of our own money in the system that we presently have. That's not freedom, guys. That's not freedom. So why is it that the Democrats will be siding with the banks on this? I thought Democrats were supposed to be for the people, for the little guy, for the guy who's struggling, right? Isn't that their whole thing? Like, take money from the rich, give it to the poor. Well, here's a way to help the poor and the struggling. Free them from the banking cartel. But yet, for some reason, they're against this the Genius Act and the Clarity Act.
A lot of government officials are paid off by banks and by pharmaceuticals. That's what kind of gets us in the mess. Greed. These people make $170,000 to $200,000, but then they get paid off a lot by the bankers. And then also a lot of Democrats and a lot of people, they don't want transparency of blockchain technology because they're part of the fraud, they're part of the scam, they're part of the insider trading. And the more transparency you have in the system, the less money the government officials that you elected into power and trusted, the less they can do and the less money they're going to make. So we've seen that.
That's all very true. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of lobbying that's going on. There's probably personal reasons why some of them don't want that transparency. But you'd hope that there would be enough Democrats who they were rooting for the little guy. They were out to help the average everyday Americans. They didn't like the big evil corporations. Again, I thought that's what the Democrats' whole shtick was. Anti-immigrant, anti-big corporations, anti-billionaires. Take the money, give it to the poor. Like, isn't that the whole pitch? And then when presented with the option of actually helping average everyday Americans, you're siding with the banks. Disgraceful.
Well, what we need to happen here is Ethereum, Bitcoin side with crypto, and then maybe we'll get this thing called an alt season. I don't know if you've heard about it. I think it went extinct a couple of years ago, but no one is talking about alt season anymore, and that is bullish. Sentiment data shows social media mentions of alt season have fallen to their lowest level in the past 2 years. Historically, when retail stops talking about altcoins, large holders begin quietly accumulating. I mean, we've been talking about how alts kind of come to life, opportunities come to life, even amidst a couple days of green candles. I think there's obviously still a lot of opportunity in crypto, in the trenches, in altcoins, but it really, in my opinion, banks on Ethereum going higher in price. Retail is here and around, but nobody is talking, nobody is DCAing, nobody is putting more money in or expanding the knowledge to their friends. Why? Because they're staring at red candles and red portfolios. They need to see green candles, green portfolios, and have something to brag about in order to onboard their friend Bob that they work with at their 9 to 5.
Yeah, looking at this chart, don't expect alt season to start tomorrow, but is this a time to start taking some positions and to start grabbing alts that are basically sitting at the all-time lows, even if they're strong, well-established blue chips, probably is a wise time to get started on that. So, look, do I know exactly when alt season is going to come back? No, I do not. But it will come back, guys. It will absolutely come back. The greed never changes. Remember, the human emotions that govern this market, that never changes. The catalysts change. The historical moments change. The presidents change. But the emotions that actually govern this market to a large degree do not change. The fear and the greed. The greed will come back when there are green candles. Right now, we're still close to max fear. I mean, I think we're fear at 10 or 12. So I know we're off the lows of 5. Remember we were at 5 like a month ago? That sucked. So we're a little bit better than that. But we're still in the fear. We're not in the greed, but the greed will absolutely come back, folks. Do not worry. We saw it we saw it even a couple days ago when Bitcoin ran like a little bit, and everyone, people are feeling better. I'm seeing some posts about the trenches. I'm seeing new projects pop up. We closed a deal at Pools. New project coming over there. Maybe we'll talk about soon. So a couple of green candles on Bitcoin, and you get the trenches back to life. Now just imagine sustained month after month, 3 months of green candles on Bitcoin and ETH, what the trenches start to look like. So it'll come back, folks. Do not lose faith. It's all good.
We got Cookie Dev in the chat box here. Yo, good morning. Shout out to you. Let's look at see this Bitcoin monthly return chart. See where we're sitting here. Now that we gave up some of the gains from yesterday, here we go. March is still green, 1.71%. We've been talking about this. The longest red streak in history was 6 months of red in a row for Bitcoin. That followed up with 5 months of green that did a 4x of Bitcoin price. February was the 5th month in a row, and some pretty big red months. A 4% October, a 17% November, 3% December. This was supposed to be the 4-year cycle blow off top, and it was all red. January red, February red with no Clarity Act, Iran war, Greenland Fund. Now we're at 1.71% green here in March. Do you think that March ends up green and we start a massive 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months in a row of green for Bitcoin? Or do you think March goes red and we tie the longest ever losing streak in Bitcoin history while still not falling below that 50% drawdown level?
Well, yesterday or the day before, I predicted March will be green, and I'm sticking by that prediction. How does it feel, everyone who's watching the stream, to know that your financial future, in the near term anyway, is determined by one man's decisions? Kind of crazy to think. But Donald Trump could literally cause this market to pump at any moment in time by saying, hey, the victory, we could declare victory tomorrow. The Iranians ain't going to do shit. The war will be over. Now, the people there, the citizenry, they may suffer because the regime wouldn't have been fully, destroyed. And, so that could be ugly, if we're thinking about the lives of protesters and so on. But he could end this war tomorrow. And the market could pump and run like crazy, because it absolutely would. Oil would crash back down, risk on, yay, war is over. Look, by the way, if you guys are worried about wars and concerned about wars in terms of price performance, look at some charts. How does the market, you can Google it, how does the market do after wars? It's always up. So Donald Trump could literally cause a massive green candle here and end the war. Or conversely, he could be like, guys, we're in this shit till September. We're going to kill every last one of these mother effers, and we're going to do it however long it takes. We're going to spill as much blood and oil and treasure as needed. And it's like, oh shit, market's going to nuke. So really, I mean, it's in the hands of one guy. You better hope he does the right thing. My guess is he does. My guess is within the next 1 to 2 weeks, we'll have degraded their military enough to actually declare victory. Then the Kurds will sweep in, deal with the remainder of the regime on the ground. We'll continue to provide them air support. But the Strait of Hormuz will open back up. We'll be able to declare victory, and green candles will proliferate.
Yeah, I mean, their goal was 4 weeks, and they've been saying they were ahead of schedule, behind schedule, whatever. And 4 weeks will line up pretty good with the Clarity Act being enacted by the end of March as well. So imagine a world in which the Iranian war, the Iranian conflict, whatever you want to call it, it was resolved by the end of March. Clarity Act gets passed by end of March. People are getting their first round of tax refund checks by end of March, 3,800 per person, the largest tax refunds in the history of America. That's a lot of money, subsidization, and market dynamics that would be pushing prices higher, especially with the underpriced valuation of Bitcoin and Ethereum in comparison to the stock market, gold market, and silver market. So, I mean, that's possible. Not guaranteed, but those are three potential things that could come into play in the next 24 days.
I think more likely than not, certainly the war, I think, is going to end here within the next few weeks. At least this phase of the war. Maybe we'll move to a new phase, again, led by the Kurds. Apparently the Kurds are already in the country of Iran, and they're waiting to attack. They're waiting to go to battle. And we just need to give them the green light and say, yeah, we'll defend you from the air. So the Kurds are ready to go. The bombing campaign will end, I think, within 1 to 2 weeks. Eventually, all the targets will have been destroyed, at least all the ones we can reach. And we'll move into a new phase of the conflict, or it will, in fact, be completely over, and we'll have a Venezuela model where, okay, yeah, the regime's still in place, but they're basically kind of like under our control at that point. So we'll see. We will see how it all plays out. The one big question mark is the Fed, and I'm glad you pulled this up because, again, I don't think they're going to come to our rescue with a rate cut. But if the job market, if we get another month of bad job numbers coming in March, they're going to have to start some sort of QE. If they can't get consensus on a rate cut, they're going to have to start flooding the economy and the markets with capital to basically save our butts. Because that's what the Fed always does. They always overcorrect. Remember when they overcorrected during COVID? And they printed an extra trillion we definitely did not need, which then caused inflation to skyrocket to 9%. And now they're overcorrecting on the other side. Too much tightening, too much trying to squeeze out the last drop of inflation. They're going to end up overcorrecting there, causing a mini temporary recession, or at least the fear of it, and they'll have to then step in with some quantitative easing. My prediction.
Yeah, we talked about the job numbers, we talked about real estate market, and we talked about the war. And what do you know? The chance of a 25 basis point hasn't jumped dramatically, but it's jumped from less than 1% to 1%. So, hey, we're trending in the right direction, folks. If you took the bet yesterday, you're already up on the odds. 11 days to go. This is another thing we were talking about potentially by the end of March, end of war, tax refund checks. Clarity Act. Well, in 11 days, you could potentially get an interest rate cut. That'd be nice, but the market is saying no. If I click on this, yesterday, if you bet $100, you could win $14,000. Today, if you bet $100, you can win $7,000. So a stark difference in potential returns for those of you who watched yesterday versus today. Still no guarantee of an interest rate cut. The market says there's no way it's going to happen. But hey, $100 yesterday for a chance at $14,000. That's probably pretty good odds and something you could take a bet on. We'll see what happens. Does the Fed want to be the first kind of indicator or incentive or nice pump for the markets leading into the end of March in 11 days? I mean, Powell, would that look? Probably not. But I think the numbers show that they should be cutting and not padding firm.
Well, here's the interesting thing about the rate cut decision. Maybe it's a bit of a red herring. Maybe it's a bit of a distraction over what we really should be talking about and what they really may end up doing, which is quantitative easing. The rates being where they're at now hasn't actually driven down the cost of getting a loan. That's the crazy thing to think about. The cost of a mortgage is still 6%. The overnight rate that the Fed is lending money out at is 3.5 or 3.25. What we need to happen is the Fed to engineer through quantitative easing a reduction in those long-term interest rates that Americans actually pay for things. Because I don't care what the banks are lending the money out to each other at, and the Fed is lending the banks money at. What I care about is what my mortgage costs. And the only way I'd seemingly that I guess they can pull this off now, because the lowering of the rates hasn't really done it. The only way they can do this is quantitative easing. So do they step in with some money printing here before the labor market really shits the bed? That's been a lot of people saying that now with, the war, happening and energy prices and blah, blah, blah. Does the Fed need to step in with some QE? So that, look, Powell's talking, I think, later today. Does QE light turn into QE proper? Let's find out.
I got zooming in here on the Bitcoin chart because remember, we were at the lows when we were talking about this down here at 68,000, saying we really want this 4-hour candle to bounce and close above this yellow line. I think this is the 200 moving average, around $68,900, 69,000. We have 39 minutes left. It has bounced up about $1,000, $500 off the low here. We need it to go another few $100s higher in the next 39 minutes. That's what I would really love to see. Get back in between the 200 and the 300 moving average. Keep consolidating there and create that pressure cooker to the upside. 39 minutes will tell us a lot. If you like candles, I don't usually trade candles, but this is a candle that I'm sure a lot of candle traders are watching here. 39 minutes and 19 seconds. The countdown begins. If you use TradingView, just choose Bitcoin US dollar. Go to 4 hour. I like Coinbase here. A lot of volume. And just kind of watch and see when this candle closes. Add the 200 moving average and the 300 moving average to your chart. And let's see if we can get that close. A slight bounce here is nice. We need to go a couple $100 more in the next 38 minutes and 59 seconds.
Got some we got some good comments here from the viewers. What's going on? How's it going, Frank? Good to see you. Smash like, share, subscribe. Absolutely. Please do so. Can't argue with green candles. Let's make it happen soon. Yeah, you hear that, Donald Trump? We're tired of red. We're tired of red. Let's engineer some green. He really could do it, man. He could tomorrow decide to end the war. I don't think he'll do it tomorrow, but he'll do it soon. The other thing I spoke about earlier is a single tanker, or let's just call it a few tankers, getting through the Strait of Hormuz unmolested and untouched, protected by the U.S. Navy, and insured by the federal government. That's what's happening now, by the way. The London-based insurers, who knows? Maybe they're run by Islamists too. I'm not sure, but they said we're not going to insure at a reasonable price any tanker going through the strait. Trump says, "Oh, guess what? Wealthiest nation in the world. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do it." So the insurance is back. You're protected by American Navy. Will we have destroyed enough of the rocket launchers, etc., to make it safe to pass through the strait? And do a couple tankers get through over the next few days, signaling that, hey, oil flow can continue, oil prices can drop, world economy isn't going to crash. That's literally all it could. That's all it would take.
Yeah, I would hate for, say, 6 tankers go for it, 5 get through, and 1 gets sunk, because the 5 aren't going to get any of the props. The one that gets sunk is going to be on the news. You're going to have the Islamists saying America is weak. You're going to have the oil traders saying, see, this is why it's surging, because they're long. And then you're going to have Greta Thunberg switch back to activism and climate change, talking about not how many people died on the oil tanker, but how many fish are dying from the oil spilling into the ocean.
Yeah, maybe. There is a risk. I mean, there's certainly, if you're a risk-averse, captain or owner of one of these oil tankers, yeah, certainly don't try to make it through yet. But if you're a little bit of a gambling man, and you have assurances from the U.S. Navy, and there's enough, you know that the offensive capabilities of Iran have been degraded to the point where they really can't threaten ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. Plus the insurance is there. I think eventually we start to see shipping open back up. Oil's going to flow again. The war is going to come to an end. At least this phase of the war is going to come to end, my guess, the next 1 to 2 weeks. And then it's sort of like, what happens next? I think by the way, if you've been watching reports, the Kurdish army, which is apparently the Kurdish people, are 40 million people. It's not a small amount. Now, they're not all in the army, of course. But this is like a sizable population of people that are kind of native to that region of the world. I guess, even within Iran, there's a very large population of them. Anyway, they're ready to attack. They're ready to go. And then what does that mean for the markets? If we stop the bombing campaign, Israel stops the bombing campaign, and then it moves into a ground war, but sort of being led by the Kurds. What does it all mean for the markets? I don't know. I have to wrap my head around that. What are your thoughts, Nick, on the next phase? Do you think that's going to happen? I don't know if you've been following.
Well, I've seen the Kurd news. The only thing I've seen about the Kurd news is like the negatives. I haven't really seen about the positives. Haven't heard much. But I think there was something about us arming Kurds. So it's like now we're putting firearms and stuff in the hands of people who don't really love us per se. But also it was the Turkey opposition of that. Now you might be bringing another country into this, because I guess Turkey and the Kurds have had major oppositions. And now if the United States is funneling funds and weaponry to the Kurds, who are kind of enemies of Turkey, then now you might have another opposition in this whole war here. So I don't look too much into it. But
this is the genius of what Donald Trump has done. By being so aggressive and just taken out all these world leaders and just shown that we have the biggest dicks and the best military, in the schoolyard. What is Turkey gonna do? Just because they're upset that Kurds got armed in order to fight the Iranians? By the way, we've armed the Kurds in the fight against ISIS. They still have weapons from then. This is an old story. It's not a new thing, arming the Kurds so they can do our dirty work in the Middle East. I mean, this is not a new thing. But anyway, I don't think Iran would do anything other than say, "Oh, I can't believe you did that."
Yeah, what is your opinion? What is your opinion on spending funds to arm people who, I guess, are on our side against Iran, but not really on our side on the bigger macro picture? I guess this goes back thousands of years because Roman Empire, Ottoman Empire, all of them used to arm mercenaries so they didn't have to sacrifice their own best and brightest. They put weapons in the hand of mercenaries that go and do the dirty work, and then they worry about the mercenaries on the back end if they're going to go against the bigger Ottoman regime or the United States regime here.
I'm not worried about the Kurds, turning heel and being like, we're all of a sudden terrorists. They've proven to be moderate. I'm sure they are Muslims, but they're moderates. They're not trying to become terrorists. I don't think that's I'm not worried about that. I guess it's kind of just because we're having a conversation here, ground war would be disastrous, huge body counts. I guess I like to think about things in terms of options and alternatives. Okay, so no ground war. We've destroyed most of the regime's military capability, but they still have thousands, tens of thousands of armed soldiers who could just murder any citizen of Iran who's protesting against them and wants to form their own democratic government, which I think we all want that at the end of the day. We don't want this regime in power. So that's option A. The regime stays in power. We see another 30,000, 50,000 innocent civilians from Iran getting gunned down in the street. Or you have the Kurds go in and fight a bloody ground war against the regime for a year or two. I don't know. I mean, it's not great options. It's not great options. But by the way, anyone who thinks this is all Trump's fault, the Iranians could have just said, all right, guys, we're relinquishing our nuclear ambitions. We're going to become a real country that prioritizes its citizens, that wants to build its economy, wants to make money for everybody, be a real freaking country instead of just, we want to kill everybody, chant death to this, death to that. If they had just done that, they said, hey, you know what? We're giving up our crazy theocratic beliefs, and we're going to become westernized. We're going to be a democracy. You think there'd be a war right now in the Middle East? We didn't attack any other country in the Middle East. We just attacked the one that's nuts and was trying to get nukes at all costs. So, if we're looking for, okay, whose fault is Donald Trump's fault? No, he gave the Iranians every chance to say we're going to be a normal country. They said no. We're going to keep building up weapons and bombs, and we want to build a nuclear. We want to build our nukes up, and then we're just going to threaten everyone in our region and maybe cause a nuclear war. Who knows what would have happened at that point? These are not rational, normal people like you guys and us watching the stream. They don't have the same worldview as Western folks. I'm just out here trying to make some money, relax with my family, have a good time with my boys on the weekend. You think anyone in America truly wants this? Of course not. We just want peace and to make money. That's all us Westerners care about. So anyway, I'm just sick of this whole, it's all Trump's fault, blah, blah, blah. It just completely ignores 50 or 60 years of history. Not to mention the 30,000 people that were killed by the regime for protesting. I don't know why more people aren't upset about that.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy because the people protesting here for Gaza or whatever, Ukraine, whatever, but then in Iran, 30,000 people are killed for the very thing they're doing, and they act like that's okay. We're not going to mention that. That's not worthy of war. You know what I mean? So, pretty wild. The markets are not liking it today. We had that great uptrend. Trump did a Truth Social posts, and there has been some escalations over the past 14 to 16 hours here, sending prices higher. A big candle close here for Bitcoin in the next 30 minutes, bouncing a little off the lows. It'd be nice if it gets back above $69,000 to keep momentum going in between the moving averages. Not great options, obviously, but we'll see how this all goes here in the short future. It'd be nice if all this is resolved by the end of March. You get the Clarity Act by the end of March. You maybe get an interest rate cut here in 11 days. And you get those tax rebates, the largest ever in the history of America, coming by the end of March as well. For those of you who file your taxes, pay your taxes, not the ones with your hand out getting free money from the government every month.
Yeah, good conversation here on the Middle East discussion. I'd have to go back and sort of evaluate the reasons why and what happened with Libya, Syria. I obviously we know Iraq and Afghanistan. I think we can all agree that 20-year occupations are horrible mistakes. Should never have done it. That was bad. That was dumb. I know we were pissed. Fat Sammy, you're not in the U.S. But after 9/11, I know I live very close to New York. So after 9/11, we knew people whose family members got killed in those attacks, right? People were pissed. We were out for blood, and we overcorrected hard. You know, there's no reason we should. In retrospect, we should never have invaded Afghanistan. Should have taken out, find Osama bin Laden and the people responsible. Sure, kill them, revenge, blah blah blah. But don't invade a country for 20 years. That was a horrible mistake. Same with Iraq. I know we were worried about weapons of mass destruction and so on. I'm sure there were some reasons at the time. But again, a long-term ground war didn't make sense. Although I will say this, by the way, Iraq is now more or less a functioning country. No one talks about that. No one is talking about how they don't threaten their neighbors and they're not run by an insane dictator anymore. But that's actually, so not a terrible outcome with Iraq. I don't remember Libya, Syria. I think those were limited strikes for some whatever reason happened there. Look, is U.S. perfect? No, of course not. I would never go out and say that it is. Do we make every right decision? Of course not. But in this conflict, in this instance, you need to ask yourself, what would have you done if you had the intelligence and the information that Donald Trump had, in terms of them building up their ballistic capabilities again, in terms of them they said, we're very close. We can make 11 nukes quick. That was their opening salvo in the negotiations, threatening that, hey, we're close to making 11 nukes. What now, U.S.? Building up all this bombing capabilities, knowing what the regime and their mindset is and their belief system. What would have you done in that situation? Just waited? Just waited until they started the war, or waited until they shot a nuke off, or waited until they did something horrible? I guess you could have done that. I guess you could be the guy that waited. Or maybe you want to do the Obama approach and try to pay him off with a couple $1 billion. There's no good options, guys.
Giving them money is kind of the most funny thing I've ever seen. It's like, oh, we don't want to spend money to fight them, but we'll just give them a weekly and monthly allowance so they stay good, that they're going to spend on stuff to be bad.
Here's
it's like giving a drug addict money. Here's some money. Go take care of yourself. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to go get more drugs. They're not going to go take care of themselves. That's like what we were doing with Iran the past decade.
Yeah, well, the problem was, and look, I want to believe in the good of all humanity. I really do. I want to think everyone is just like me. I just want to make money, hang out with my boys, take care of my family, and maybe try to get laid once a week from the wife. I'm a simple guy. Okay? But not everyone in the world is like me or you. Okay? There's some people who are truly nuts. And they fervently believe that their mission in life is to take over the world, convert you all to a religion. If you don't convert, they have the right to kill you. That's who you're dealing with, guys. You're not dealing with normal, guys just wants to hand it. Because if that were the case, then the payoffs would have worked. And Iran would have said, oh, great, thank you so much. We're going to take this money. We're going to build our society up. We're not going to go crazy and just try to build up our military. We're going to build a real country, and we're going to be peaceful. They didn't do that. They don't want to do that. So again, what would have you done? Everyone who's watching the stream, what would have you done given these choices? They're not good choices. It's hard. It's like rock in a hard place. I don't think anyone truly wants war. But it's like, damn, what do you do when a crazy person is hell-bent on building up their military and threatening and death to America, death to Israel, death to England, by the way. They used to they still chanted death to England. I don't know, maybe it doesn't bother you. I know Sammy's British, so, just pointing that out. But they're not like you and me, guys. They're not. They're not the same. I think folks kind of just forget that, or they ignore it or something, but I don't know. The whole thing, I think, it bothers me a bit because you're seeing everyone out there on socials acting like this is such an easy thing, and they would have. Oh yeah, I definitely wouldn't have attacked. I mean, I never would have done this war. Really? Knowing what Donald Trump knew, you don't have the intelligence he has, right? Just remember that. You don't have the information getting passed to him by to you by the CIA and the armed forces, etc. So you don't really know what's going on. But I think if you had the information he had, you would have been in a tough spot too, and maybe started a war yourself.
I think the worst decision so far was probably Trump's tweet this morning. The messaging has been we want this to be 4 weeks. We're ahead of schedule. We've killed 53 of their top 100 officials now, and we've killed 2 of their supreme leaders that they appointed, which is all win-win-win. Hey, this thing's going to end quick. And then you post, there will be no negotiations. Utter defeat is necessary, or whatever he wrote. And I think that is the worst thing that he's done, because just leave the markets for sure. For the markets. Leave the door open for negotiation. If that's what you want to tell them in private and let them know that, sure. But as for public facing, it's not a good look for the markets. It's not a good look for the people who are supporting the war. It's not a good look for the people who are against the war, because now they're going to be all on CNN. See, Trump doesn't even want negotiation. This is going to be multi-year. we gotta turn it all into a sandbox. It's like you shouldn't even have done that. Nothing good comes out of that, except maybe you strike fear in the 55th now leader of Iran, but you could have struck that fear via private messaging. I'm sure there's other ways they communicate versus just Truth Social posts.
That's a really good point. I mean, and again, I'm not sitting here and saying every single decision that Trump makes is brilliant and perfect, but this is a messy situation. You got to ask yourself what you would have done. I agree. That was not a smart tweet at all. That was a dumb tweet. The only rationale for it would be maximum pressure. Like, we say we're not going to negotiate, so that when we do finally negotiate, they agree to the best possible terms.
Right. Trump is always open to negotiate. Trump's a negotiator. Trump doesn't need to win. He doesn't need to have supreme winning on anything. He just needs to win the deal. He just needs to have the 51% better on any deal done, and he'll negotiate with anybody. Even he's had Mandami in the Oval Office after he called him a fascist, a Nazi, a this, or that, or this. Like, he's not opposed to putting his pride behind and forgiving people if the negotiation is 51% in his favor, and for him, the 51% in his favor is for the American people's favor. Now, whether you agree with everything, all the deals he makes, whether that's the best for America, I believe that he's doing that for the American people, for the American dollar, for the inflation, for whatever it is. At least in his eyes, that's his goal.
I mean, here's what he should do. Prosecute the war for another few weeks to the point where they really can't attack anyone again, at least for the time being. If you want to bring the Kurds in to provide some degree of security protection for the protesters and so on who are going to be protesting and trying to form their own democratically elected government, that's good. I don't know if the Kurds should go on the offensive. Maybe for a short period of time it's okay, but we don't want to protract a ground war. I don't mind them being there for defense. But at some point, we're going to have to define what victory means. I don't know if true regime change and democracy is going to be possible in the near term. We'll have to see. I don't know how badly the regime's actually defeated. But if we have to just do the Venezuela model, where the regime is still there, but at least it's being run by someone who's less insane, and they can't threaten the region and the world with their military, maybe that's a sufficient victory, and we can kind of call it a day and just hope for the best. And if they go on the offensive, they start rebuilding shit again, then it's a very short lease and we just bomb the shit out of them again. So, I don't know, man. I don't got all the answers. This is not an easy situation. Anyone's pretending like, oh, he never should have done this, or he should have done this, that, the other. Guys, this is hard. This is really hard, and I want you to think through the scenarios and what you would have done. Yeah, the other armed groups are invading with some real sketchy extreme... Guys, it's the Middle East. This is all tribalistic, sketchy, extremist. This is all people by American and European standards are all out of their minds. But this is the region. This is what we're dealing with, guys. So it's like if you don't want to arm the Kurds, what's the alternative? What is going to happen? Isn't the regime just going to gun down 50,000 more protesters in the street? Because they still have weapons to do that?
I guess that's my question, because I find myself more in the middle on this. Bad Sammy's probably middle left on this. But it's like, how does, just in general, in the history of these scenarios, how does a country get from extremist dictatorship to back to democracy? Because remember, it wasn't that long ago, 46 years, 47 years ago, Iran was more Western than America, really. I mean, they had a stronger set culture, but all the individuals, it looked like America in the 70s. You know, you go look at the rock concerts, that's what Iran looked like 47 years ago. How do they get back to some kind of semblance of that? They were still Muslim at that time, but they were much more westernized as far as their values, their cultures, their beliefs, their wardrobe, their freedoms. Like, how is it possible to go from a dictatorship that's reigned supreme for 40 or 50 years to get back to democracy? Have there been any recent situations where that's true? I know Afghanistan is in a better situation than it is now, but is that truly a democracy? Like, how do you
No,
reverse
Afghanistan's
course?
run by the Taliban. They're as backwards as they come. Like, women have to walk around with just like their eyes revealed like this, or else they get stoned to death. Afghanistan's terrible. But maybe Iraq is a decent example.
That's
I don't
what
know.
I meant,
I'm not a
Iraq, yeah.
historian or anything, but I'm sure there have been examples of. Hey, we can even look at Syria, I believe it is, where Hezbollah and where extremists have been in control, like up till like a year ago. And then, you know, October 7th happens, Israel retaliates, you know, kills a lot of the Hezbollah leadership, whatever. And then they get a new, more moderate president, and they're kind of trying to become more moderate, more democratic. And it's kind of working thus far as I can tell. I'm no expert on it by any stretch. But there are definitely instances where a dictator goes in democracy, even if it's a flawed democracy, even if it's still very sectarian and there's differences and maybe there's some violence and so on. It takes a while to get an established, like, non-violent democracy. It's not easy to convince people to give up power. You know, peaceful transition of power isn't, you know, it's a foreign concept to a lot of people, especially in that part of the world. So is it going to be overnight, like super perfect democracy, no one ever gets hurt and there's never any fighting in it? No, of course, it's going to be a process. But again, it's like, what are the alternatives? Because the regime staying in power is really not a great option. The only way I would support that is if the new leaders of that regime just basically said, okay, we're not going to be violent anymore and we're going to be more reasonable people. If they want to still institute Islamic law on their entire population, I mean, it sucks for those people who are westernized over there. But I don't know if we can just take them out based on, oh, they're extreme Muslims. I think the only basis to continue the fight would be if they are not giving up and they want to keep fighting and being violent. So I don't know, man. I don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers. If anyone's pretending like this is easy, I think, you know, you have to look at them like they're a little nuts. Bashar Assad was a great leader, very popular. I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, didn't he kill a bunch of his own citizens and stuff with chemical weapons? I mean, I'm no expert on it. Maybe Syria is the wrong example, but I'm pretty sure there are examples of countries that were under a dictatorship. The dictatorship either got toppled from the outside, like we're doing now with Iran, or from the inside. And then what came out of that was democracy. And even if it was flawed, it was better than the previous thing. Why can't, you know, that really should be the goal here is not perfection. The goal here is it's a little bit better than how it was. And I think this war does that. Now, you could argue, was it worth the cost? This is going to cost us how many billions of dollars? You know, reputationally, I don't, you know, there's going to be costs to it all. But it's like, was the status quo acceptable? So I don't know, guys. You think these things through. Everyone's going to have their own opinions. But of course, your opinion, my opinion doesn't matter. All that matters is the opinion of Donald J. Trump. Sorry, folks.
Yep, we'll be wrapping it up here. 15 minutes left in the 4-hour candle for Bitcoin, battling to get back above the 200 moving average at $68,775 right now. Really need to get to 69,000 and change. Let's see what happens here, and let's see if Trump can walk back that message he sent out today. I think that was the biggest misstep he has made so far during this whole escalation, just because I don't see anybody taking that in a positive light. So we'll see what happens. Again, it's just a message. Who really cares? It's really about results. You know, he said 4 weeks. Everybody wants 4 weeks. It's only been about 1 week. Actually, not even a week yet, because wasn't the first bombs
Saturday? We're 6 days in.
So
we're 6 days in. The Iran military has been basically completely defeated. Yeah, I mean, there's probably still some more work to do. But, I'm already thinking about next phase, what comes next. Is it going to be the Kurds going in, or is the regime going to moderate a bit? We have a Venezuela model. No one really knows what's going to happen here. What are the Israelis going to do? Because the Israelis view the Iranians much more as an existential threat than the Americans. Probably rightfully so, because they're so much closer. And so do they push further, and does Trump take a step back and the Israelis take over the fight? I don't know, man. There's a lot of unknowns. My overall message, positive message, would be eventually this will end. One way or another. This war is going to end. It's not going to go on forever. And when it does end, oil prices will go back down. Markets will start pumping again. And, we'll forget about this, and we'll move on to the next dramatic thing that Trump does.
Cookie Dev says the day is long. He would tweet something before the market closed. That would probably be smart, especially with it being Friday. I would expect we like to do escalations or big targeted strikes over the weekend. So I'd expect something before market close, maybe get some confidence back. We have a big blowout this weekend, maybe take out some more targets, and then let's see what Monday brings as far as resolution to the conflict going over there. And then Fat Sammy says, it looks like we're paying back yesterday's gains on the crypto market. Yes, we are giving up most of the gains. That's why I also say it is very important here in 13 minutes. Where does this 4-hour candle close on Bitcoin and Ethereum? Can we stay above the previous lows that we put in yesterday? And can we reclaim the consolidation in between the 200 and 300 moving averages? In 13 minutes, we will see.
Yeah, I mean, for everyone who's worried about the markets, and look, I don't like seeing red either. No one likes seeing red. But I think you have to be quite encouraged by the market's reaction to the war in and of itself. We could easily be living in a universe where Bitcoin, on the day that the attacks happened and the subsequent days, crashes to the 55 mark that a lot of bears are looking for, or God forbid, that 40 mark. But that's not the timeline we're living in. We're living in the timeline where it actually pumped up above 70,000 during wartime. So to me, that's kind of bullish if you're, thinking about Bitcoin over the long term. I don't know if it means Bitcoin is now viewed as like a hedge and risk, a risk off kind of investment, a digital gold, or I don't even know what the hell it means, to be honest. I don't know what to make of it. But I'm much happier to see Bitcoin above 70 than below 60, which could easily have happened during this war, but it didn't happen. So hopefully the worst is behind us for Bitcoin and crypto. Hopefully we can start climbing up out of these lows as we've been doing. Of course, we're going to have some red days, as we grind up out of there. That's, you're always going to have some red days. But again, like thinking about alternatives, we could easily be sub 60 right now. But we're not.
And last message from Cookie Dev. Shout out to you for being here. Smash the like button, guys. Great show with great vibes. Share the subscribe. And then Fat Sammy says, great show. Thanks for the debate. Yeah, Fat Sammy, always willing to discuss. We always want other people's opinion. Although we really only see comments on YouTube, which is a lower of our viewer base than Twitter, obviously. Always come in here, whether it's a debate, a positive, a negative, doesn't matter. And then, of course, hopefully we get to the point where we're talking less about macros and more about individual crypto and stock assets for trading ideas, insider information, opportunities, whatever you want to call it, so we can all be making gains on the daily and the weekly rather than looking at the monthly and quarterly macros in which we've been stuck in for the past 5 months, as Bitcoin has been red 5 months in a row.
We do have some gems, some projects we'll be talking about and highlighting here, whether they're calls through Crypto Paradise or whether going on the Pools Launchpad platform, which we're now leading. So, we will get back to the degen stuff, but right now it's kind of like, gains are so hard to come by over in the trenches that it's really, and plus people, I think people are interested in the macros. Maybe not the Federal Reserve stuff, but at least the Middle East wars. I think you saw Twitter got like its highest usage over the past week or whatever, because people are locked in and care about this topic. So we'll talk about it. I'm interested in this stuff. It's fascinating to think about. Hope everyone's staying safe out there, though. It's the most important thing. Glad you guys tuned in today. Appreciate everyone's time. We are off on Saturday and Sunday, of course, but we will see you guys on Monday. And until then, see you on the beach.